What if the Mad King successfully burned all of King's Landing? Let's explore the depths of it in the video.
Burn them all!
Aerys sinks back into his throne as he watches his pyromancers hurry to carry out his command, leaving him alone in the throne room. Jaime Lannister had left earlier to check on Elia Martell and her children. Not that the Mad King would need him. With his father leading the attack on King's Landing, he doubted Jaime would raise his sword against him. So, in an increasingly rare moment of lucidity, Aerys ordered the young kingsguard away so he could not interfere with these orders. The king smiles as he considers this plot. Even now, as thousands of Westermen storm the city, they shall find victory beyond their reach. The fighting soon grows louder as men shout from the Red Keep, and a battering ram strikes the door. He does not know how long he's waiting, but it does not matter, for in the end, all that will remain of those men will be ash and bones. When the dust settles, the dragon shall rule. From outside the keep, wood splinters as the gates threaten to buckle from the attack. Tywin watches this and prepares to lead the charge. But then, the sound from the dragon pit deafens the world. A series of explosions rip through the ancient grounds, throwing up stones and a brilliant display of green fire. Another forms in the Sept of Baelor, and more in Fleabottom, the Street of Silk and the Street of Steel. In seconds, a dozen green explosions go off simultaneously. Tywin's eyes widen as he hears one beneath his feet and watches the whole world turn green and hot. The entire Red Keep goes up in flames. The men who were killing each other earlier now scream as the fires consume them. Aerys laughs as the sounds of wildfire fill the air, silencing Tywin at last. He laughs as his throne room erupts in flames, and as Maegor's holdfast burns with his granddaughter and Jaime Lannister inside. He even laughs as he is consumed by the fire. It takes only an hour, but soon the entire city goes up in flames, taking royalist, rebel, and small folk with it. But news travels even faster. Just a few leagues out, Ned Stark and his Northmen stare up in horror, as if a green sun were birthed right in front of them. From Dragonstone, Viserys watches the fires, transfixed by the destruction and power his father has. All across the Seven Kingdoms, the entire realm falls silent as reports of what happened filter in. Mace Tyrell looks out in horror, uttering a terrified prayer as he sees smoke rising. From within the walls of Storm's End, Stannis' cool demeanor breaking for a moment as fear overtakes him. Robert and Barristan both stumble from their sickbeds in the Trident, looking out to see the smoke, their faces falling. In the Mander, the Ironborn cease their raidings as they hear this news, loot spilling from their hands as they drop to their knees and begin praying for the drowned god's protection. At the Tower of Joy, the three knights look at one another, their faces ashen.
What monster did we protect?
Fire was nothing new to the continent that had once been home to dragons, but even the likes of the Fields of Fire or the burning of Harrenhal had never reached this level of destruction, had never killed so many people so quickly. The air reeks of death and alchemy as Ned rides through the corpse of King's Landing. The streets, where once merchants haggled, children played, and knights paraded, are nothing more than scorched bones and melted stone. Even the waters around the city churn and bubble, even in the days after its destruction. He has come not as a conqueror, but as a mourner, searching for the living among the dead, but there is no one left. Those few he finds die within hours of finding them. All but one. Ned finds him near the shattered gates of Maegor's Holdfast, half buried in soot and ruin. A man lifts his head. His hair, once golden, is drained of color, bleached white as bone. His skin, what remains of it, is tight against his gaunt frame, blistered, cracked, his kingsguard armor fused to his flesh in places. This man had once been Jaime Lannister. When Ned asks him what happened, all the knight can do is babble.
Burn them all. Burn them all.
Soon Robert Baratheon approaches, his massive frame hunched in disbelief. He had dreamed of standing in the halls of the Red Keep as a conqueror, of dragging Rhaegar's corpse through the streets. But there is no throne, no enemies left to kill, only the dead, and the sickly green glow of wildfire still simmering in the deepest ruins. Robert's war-born fury drains in an instant. He turns, scanning the faces of his men, the lords who followed him to the bitter end. Their silence tells him what he already knows. No one will march on Dragonstone. No one will risk the flames. The rebellion is over, not by his will, but by fear. Ned watches as Robert's great victory crumbles into nothing. He watches as Jaime Lannister, the last living son of Tywin, sinks back into unconsciousness. He watches as the ruins whisper and shift, as if the very lands remembers what happened here. King's Landing is dead. And then the lords begin to speak, asking among themselves if the Mad King had hidden wildfire here, what of the rest of Westeros? What if Castle Rock is filled with the same sorcery? What of Dragonstone, the Eyrie, Storm's End? These rumors cut through the hearts of the bravest knights, the most seasoned soldiers who bled in this rebellion. Only one thought is in their mind. The war must end, but not because they have won, but because they no longer dare to fight. Viserys Targaryen, the last living son of the dragon, is crowned king. Not because any of them want him, but because they want the war to be over. Robert Baratheon stands at the edge of the ruins, gripping the hilt of his warhammer so tightly his knuckles turn white.
This isn't how it was supposed to end.
Ned watches his oldest friend, sees the raw anger simmering beneath his skin. But though he does not say it, he is afraid to. Like the others, he bends the knee. No one is happy with the peace, but no one dares break it. Once the peace is agreed to, everyone leaves King's Landing. The land is hot to the touch, where no crops can ever grow. The city is nothing more than a smoldering ruin. Its water bubbles constantly where fish cannot survive. It was a bit of the doom in Westeros. Ned Stark's horse trudges forward to the Tower of Joy. A new kind of dread settles over him. Yet, as he approaches, there are no swords drawn, no shouts of challenge, only silence. And then the door creaks open. They emerge one by one. Sir Gerald Hightower, the White Bull himself, once the proud Lord Commander Sir Arthur Dayne, the fabled Sword of the Morning, and Sir Oswald Went, the Black Bat. But these are not the kingsguard of legend. They are shadows of themselves. Their faces are hollow, gaunt, eyes ringed with exhaustion, and something else. Gerald's hand trembles where it rests on the pommel of his sword. Went's lips are dry and cracked, as if he has not spoken in days. And Arthur Dayne, the greatest knight in Westeros, stands with dawn planted in the earth, the great blade's edge buried in the sand, as if he no longer wishes to lift it.
You've come. We knew you would. There has been enough killing. Viserys has been proclaimed king. I have bent the knee already. We will not fight. Then surrender. Lay down your swords and— No! We will not serve Viserys. The boy is touched by the flames. We know what wildfire does. We know. For years we stood by Aerys' side. For years we told ourselves we were serving the realm. That we were serving the true king. We were fools. And for our foolishness the people paid. 500,000 lives snuffed out because we were too blind to stop him.
He shakes his head, something like madness flickering in his eyes. Madness driven by fear. Not fear of death. Fear of what they had been. Fear of what they had allowed. Fear from the knowledge that the blood of King's Landing is on their hands as well.
We will only serve the one who should have been king. Rhaegar is dead, but his son lives.
Arthur Dayne retreats into the tower, but emerges a few moments later with a baby wrapped in thick blankets, a few weeks old at most. He announces sadly that Lyanna had already died from the shock of the wildfire. Ned's breath catches.
He is the true dragon, Rhaegar's last wish, the prince that was promised. We ask that you help us, my lord. Let us raise him. Let us teach him. If we cannot change the past, then at least let us shape the future.
Ned looks down at the child, a babe, a life untouched by war, untouched by the sins of his father, of his grandfather. But for how long? He's seen what prophecies can do to a man, what it can lead him to do. His mind drifts back to the ruins of King's Landing. But if he does not take the boy, someone else will. Ned closes his eyes. He thinks of the fire, the screams, the silence that came after. Finally, he speaks.
Very well.
Gerald kneels before him, not as a knight, but as a man seeking absolution. And somewhere in that far distance, beyond the Red Mountains and the rivers of the Reach, the winds shift, carrying with them the scent of something cold, something old, something that has been awoken by the song of fire. The ruins of King's Landing still smolder years after the fire. The people have long fled, and only ghosts remain, their whispers carried by the acrid wind that drifts through the blackened streets. No crops grow, no birds sing. The red keep stands as a scar upon the land. Some say the fire still lingers in the deepest vaults, a green ember that refuses to die where Aerys stood. Viserys calls it a monument. He does not want to resettle it, not that anyone wishes to come back. He wants it to remain as a shrine to his father's divinity, a testament to the power of fire. His father had surpassed even Balerion the Black Dread. What were dragons compared to fire that could consume a whole city? Fire that could never be tamed, that burned not just flesh, but souls. His father had glimpsed something beyond mortal understanding. He had become something more, and they called him mad for it. They would call Viserys mad too. He does not care. He dreams of more. Instead, he takes Dragonstone as his capital, ruling the realm from there, happy to stare at the ruins of King's Landing. He walks the halls where Aegon once walked, where Daemon, the rogue prince, once plotted his conquests and dreams. The world believes him cold, bitter, withdrawn. And it is true. He speaks little, laughs less. His council rules in his name. His hand, Mace Tyrell, glad to bear the weight of governance. The lords of Westeros are content with this. Mace does an adequate job. No one steps out of line. The realm is quiet. They fear him. Rightfully so. Only one upstart truly speaks ill of him. Robert Baratheon, the one-time rebel, still resents the disastrous end of his rebellion. Viserys is happy to let him bark at the wind as he finds it amusing. Besides, he has more important things to learn. Deep beneath Dragonstone, in the hidden chambers of the castle, Viserys studies. His father had made something beautiful, something far beyond what even the Dragon Lords could accomplish. But it was only a flash in the pan. Viserys wants to make something permanent. He listens to the whispers of the alchemists, the pyromancers, the sorcerers of the East. He dreams of fire that does not die. The dragons are gone. His father had shown them the way forward. Why hatch dragons when you could become fire itself? Far from Dragonstone, a boy grows in secret. Daemon Snow, they call him, Ned Stark's supposed bastard. He is kept far from Winterfell, supposedly to appease Lady Stark, but in truth, it is so he can grow and become the king who was meant to be. The last of the kingsguard, Sir Arthur Dayne, Sir Gerald Hightower, Sir Oswell Went, later joined by Jaime Lannister. In secret, they call themselves the Order of the Wolf Dragon. They had knelt before Rhaegar, believing him the realm's salvation, but they had failed him too, for he had left them to die. Left them to guard Lyanna Stark while he chased a prophecy into the grave. They had lived, and they would not fail this son. And so, the boy who should have been Daemon Targaryen is raised far from the eyes of the crown. They train him in the ways of the sword, the lance, the bow, to become a warrior. But they are not alone. Others come. The first is Jaime Lannister, scarred and broken, but is welcomed by his brothers. Though injured, his skills remain, and he trains Daemon himself. Eventually, he goes to Winterfell to train, though only as visitors. However, in that time, Ned glimpses the young prince. In many ways, he seems much like Rhaegar, proud, graceful, and elegant. Yet he also shares his sad eyes, the sense of doom and foreboding in him. It hurts Ned to see someone so young having to deal with that, but he does not get a chance to speak to him much, as Daemon seems guarded, unwilling to open up, and his guards try to keep a low profile and keep him hidden most of the time. To most, they appear as just a few scraggly hedge knights, but as they travel, this little order grows as they find more followers. While in the north, they are invited to the Dreadfort by Roose Bolton. He does not kneel. Roose is no servant, nor does he drape himself in prophecy and prayer like the Red Priests. His interest in Daemon is not born of loyalty or love, but fascination.
There is something in this stone. My family has long practiced magic. Some deem unnatural, but today it may serve us, as I can feel it. A hunger waiting beneath the castles of the Targaryens.
What are you getting at?
We like to imagine that the dragons are what made the conquest of Valyria possible. After all, they are large and magnificent, easy enough to overawe people. But there is something else, something older than them. The Freehold was built atop blood sacrifices and magic. Messy business, but effective. This is not magic taken. It is magic that gives, and it whispers to me.
Damon clenches his fist. Something is being done there. And then comes Melisandre. She arrives in the night, draped in red, the air thick with the scent of smoke and spice. The knights bristle at her presence. Arthur Dane's hand drifts towards his sword. Oswald Went makes the sign of the seven. But Melisandre does not falter. She does not ask his name. She does not ask his purpose. She only kneels, pressing her forehead to the cold stone at his feet.
You are the prince that was promised, the Lightbringer, the fire in the darkness. The world does not yet know your name, but they will. Until they do, I shall serve you.
Damon forces himself to stay still, to keep his face blank. But as the others hear this, they immediately bow before him. Not simply kneeling, they press their faces into the dirt. The men who train him, the knights who follow him, the warriors who whisper his name in dark corners, they do not see Daemon Snow, the bastard of Winterfell. They see a dragon, coiled and waiting. Daemon does not feel like a savior, but the men around him believe. The halls of Winterfell are quiet in the dead of night. The keep is warm, but Daemon feels no warmth. He sits before the hearth in his chambers, staring into the fire as though it holds the answers he seeks, as though it might explain why men call him savior, why their eyes gleam with devotion or fear when they look upon him. He was raised to be a knight, a warrior, but not this, not a god. Just then, Ned Stark walks into his chambers.
Lord Stark, Daemon, how are you? You seem afraid. They call me Savior, Azor Ahai, the Chosen, the Prince who is promised. What if I am not? What if I fail them? You are not the first to bear a weight too heavy for your shoulders. I was never meant to be Lord of Winterfell. That was Brandon's burden. I was the quiet one, the second son, the one who would take a wife and perhaps build a small keep of my own, or serve in his household. But the gods had other plans. I did not feel ready. But when time came, I had no choice but to carry on. But you were not called divine, my lord. They do not simply want me to rule. They want me to be something more. Then do not try to be. But what if you're a man, Daemon? You bleed though your followers may wish otherwise. You falter just as Rhaegar did. And if they cannot accept that, then they are blind. Viserys was raised to believe he was something greater than a man. You must be different. Humble, yet strong. Patient, yet decisive. A man, yet a king.
Daemon says nothing, but his hands tremble as they clutch the armrests of his chair. Though for the first time, he breathes a bit easier. Ned finds the knights gathered in the great hall, standing before the Stark banners like ancient sentinels.
You must let the boy breathe. We do not smother him. No, you do not coddle him like a governess, but instead you suffocate him with talks of his destiny. Every day he is reminded of what he should be and not what he is. A boy. We are preparing him for the war to come. No, you are preparing him to be a god, to allow you to right the wrongs you committed. But he is a boy who must become a man, one who is your responsibility.
Unfortunately, whatever Daemon is, the signs of trouble continue to grow as they receive reports of White Walkers beyond the wall, their whites appearing in numbers never before witnessed. The cold is deeper, heavier, unnatural as wildlings come under attack and retreat south. But the matters of the realm do not get easier. Within Dragonstone, Viserys studies the ancient magics of the place and beyond. Qyburn and Marwyn the Mage stand before him. They are not like the fools in Old Town who fear what they do not understand. No, these men seek the truth. They are invaluable in Viserys' quest to create a new form of wildfire, dealing and burning for longer. One that cannot be extinguished.
You ask much, my lord, but there may be answers. The key, your grace, is in blood. Fire alone is fleeting, but fire fed, fire given life, can endure.
There is only one place such a power can be discovered: Valyria. Prisoners are sent beyond the smoking sea, shackled and screaming. into the ruins of Valeria. They do not return as men. They return as husks, bodies writhing with sickness, with fireworms nesting inside their flesh. In the dark halls of Dragonstone, they are sacrificed. The fire that burns from their deaths does not fade. Viserys watches the flames, entranced. This will work perfectly. He soon finds a place to test it, with Robert Baratheon growing increasingly vocal and critical of Viserys and his rule. He begins thinking of what Storm's End would look like aflame, and smiles. At the wall, 3 horn blasts sound as the White Walkers gather. Cold winds blow to announce their arrival. The torches along the battlements flicker and die, leaving only the eerie blue of the White Walkers' eyes to pierce the darkness. As they march up, a shambling wave of figures emerges as they raise their armies of whites to their side. Thousands of whites stand in unnatural silence, their eyes vacant and unblinking. They do not chant or cheer, they simply wait. At their center, the White Walkers stand tall and still, clad in ice-forged armor, their hands gripping weapons of pale crystal. And then, one of them moves. A walker steps forward, its sword gleaming like moonlight on fresh snow. With a single swing, it raises its sword and sends the whites rushing forward, scrambling up the wall. The air itself seems to turn against them, their breath crystallizing as the walkers advance. Jorah Mormont fights at the front, Longclaw flashing in the dim light. The Valyrian steel blade cleaves through the white's armor, shattering it into frozen fragments. But as it falls, more take their place and stumble up, braving the boulders and rocks thrown down and the arrows fired. The creatures do not bleed, they do not fall, and they do not break. Instead, they continue their relentless attacks, hissing and then enduring the attacks until they reach the top of the wall. For every white they kill, another takes its place. The whites pour through the foothold, dragging men down beneath their numbers. The ground is slick with frozen blood. The wall, which has stood for thousands of years, is crumbling. As Ned receives their desperate plea, Ned begins to assemble his army and ride out. But as he finishes preparing for his journey, the Order of the Wolf Dragon approach him with a request to take Daemon with him. Ned stares at them, his mouth falling open, but he has expected this and nods to Jory Cassell, who leaves the room.
I will not. This is not some petty border dispute. This is a matter of life and death, and I shall not take a boy to fight. We must take Daemon. If the prophecies are true, he is the only one who can end this. He must be there. A great if to put the fate of the world on a boy. No, I will not send a boy to die for your prophecies. This battle shall be won by men in steel. You swore to protect him, not to use him. Do you hear yourselves? You sound like men who would throw him into the fire simply to see if he burns. Lord Stark, the world is at stake, and we shall take him to the war. Perhaps, but not now. You claim to serve the realm, but all I see are men who would make a child into a weapon. You have been silent, Sir Jaime. You have been a pawn for kings before. Tell me, how did that end? Lord Stark is right. We are not doing this.
The chamber erupts into chaos. Steel is drawn, but Ned's men are ready. The doors open and Jory Cassell returns with a full garrison of Winterfell. The kingsguard are outnumbered, and despite their skill, they reluctantly throw down their weapons, especially as Melisandre advises against fighting. Ned places them under house arrest. Daemon is safe, for now. They ride hard through the storm, the banners of the north snapping in the wind. Ned Stark's forces, hastily assembled and outnumbered, are the last hope of the Night's Watch. The men of Winterfell, Carhold, and the Dreadfort charge into the fray as the wall crumbles around them. The first clash is brutal. Steel meets ice. Horses rear and scream. The whites throw themselves into the living, heedless of pain, if injury. A man cuts one down, only for it to rise again moments later, crawling at his throat with frozen fingers. Great John Umber swings his sword in wide arcs, hacking through the dead with sheer strength, bellowing curses loud enough to shake the trees. The Mormonts fight like demons, their blades slick with blackened blood, cutting down whites even as their numbers dwindle, desperate to save their uncle and brother. But the White Walkers do not fight like men. They move with eerie grace, stepping through the carnage as if untouched by the chaos. Then, slowly, gracefully, they slide their blades into men with ruthless efficiency. Ned Stark fights among his men, his sword red with blood of the dead. His horse is struck from behind, sending him tumbling into the snow. Roose Bolton helps him to his feet as he sends word of what is happening back to Winterfell, calling for reinforcements. As word reaches them, Melisandre finds Daemon standing in the hall, his face grim. He has been thinking long and hard of what Ned Stark had told him, not to be a god, but simply a man. He wonders what that can mean. All his life he was told he was destined for greatness, but to sit here and do nothing seems almost unnatural. He's done everything he can to help the Starks prepare. He gathers supplies, welcomes refugees, and gathers whatever information he can find.
This is the moment. This is why the Lord of Light has placed you here. Ride north, my king. Fulfill your destiny.
I am no king, or a god. Ned Stark leads his forces.
Ned Stark is a fool who thinks he controls the destiny of men. His hubris shall be the death of us. Only you can end the long night. If not, then his forces will fall.
What?
Word has arrived. His forces are struggling. They do not have the means to stop the Lord of Death. Only you do.
The words strike the young king like a hammer blow, but Daemon does not care about prophecy. He does not care about fate, about the grand design of gods and men. He cares about Ned.
Prepare my horse.
Amidst the battle, Ned gathers the survivors in the great hall of Castle Black, trying to rally whoever he can. The wall has already fallen and the gates have been breached. Now all they can do is gather and prepare themselves for the end. Suddenly, the door slams open and a White Walker looms over him, its sword raised high. But then, a horn blows from the south, and through the storm rides Daemon Targaryen. His kingsguard carve a path through the dead. Arthur Dayne moves like a ghost, dawn flashing like a shard of frozen moonlight, cleaving through the whites with every strike. Gerald Hightower and Oswald Went fight at his side, shields covering Daemon as Jaime takes the rear, cutting through anything in their path as Melisandre strides through the carnage, flames wreathing her hands. Whites shriek as they ignite, twisting and convulsing in their final moments before collapsing into piles of charred bones and ash. The White Walkers, once cold and calculated in their advance, suddenly surge forward with reckless abandon. They throw themselves into the melee, abandoning their eerie detachment for a frenzied assault. The sight of Daemon drives them to near madness as their mouths twist into grimaces of something almost like desperation. Then he appears. The Night King steps from the storm, clad in glistening armor of ice, his piercing blue eyes locked on Daemon. He does not charge. He does not speak. He simply walks forward, silent as the grave. The kingsguard tighten their grips on their swords, readying themselves for the fight to come. Melisandre steps forward, eyes burning with fire.
Your Grace, strike him down before he speaks. He is one of the Great Other, the enemy of life itself.
But Daemon does not move. His breath comes in ragged gasps, and his grip tightens on his sword, but something about the way the Night King stands, the way the whites have abandoned all else to stop him, unsettles him. Then, the creature does something unexpected. He lifts a single hand and taps his forehead. A flood of images rush through Daemon's mind. Viserys, a ruined throne room, fire, endless fire stretching across the world. The screams of men, women, and children as a flame that will never die consumes everything. It flows beyond the wall, burning to nothingness, and then reaches the heart of winter itself. When that falls, ash is left choking the sky, the rivers boiling, the land blackened and dead, the world burning. The Kingsguard move as one, stepping forward to strike, but Daemon raises a hand.
Stop. I see now. You were afraid. You fear what we've created.
Daemon meets the Night King's frozen gaze. The two rulers regard each other for a long moment, and then there is understanding, a realization of the weight of their responsibilities, of what they must do.
Help me stop it. Help me stop him. And when it's done, you return to the lands beyond the wall. You return to your dead, and you leave Westeros in peace, as I will ensure no man bothers you.
The Night King tilts his head, considering. Then, slowly, he nods. The Kingsguard look on in horror.
This is madness. We must end the long night. I am.
Jaime Lannister steps forward, pale hair tangled with blood and frost. He looks at Daemon, then at the Night King, then at the battlefield of corpses all around them.
I believe him. You damn yourself, Lannister.
Melisandre steps forward, fire burning in her eyes.
You abandon the light. You make a pact with darkness itself. You will lead us all into ruin.
I forge my own path.
Then you are lost. R'hllor, guide me. Burn away this false king.
Before she can strike, Daemon moves. He tears Dawn from Sir Arthur's grip. The kingsguard barely have time to react before the blade, pale as morning light, drives through her chest. She gasps, eyes wide in shock. The flames around her flicker and die. Daemon rips the sword free. Dawn emerges, ablaze. It burns with a radiance brighter than the sun, the once white steel now shining crimson and gold. The heat is not fire, it's something more, something greater. Lightbringer has been forged. But in Storm's End, another fire burns, one that puts the castle on the brink of destruction. Its walls scorched, its defenders barely holding the gates against Viserys' advancing army. Although once thought impenetrable, the castle is now set ablaze by the strange wildfire that Viserys has created. What had begun as a resolute defense under Stannis and Robert's command was now crumbling. Though the two brothers continue to rally their men, urging them to fight, the tide turns against them with each new burst of emerald fire. Viserys Targaryen stands atop a blackened siege tower, his violet eyes gleaming with something unhinged, as he calls for more wildfire to be loosed upon the Baratheon stronghold.
Burn it all. Let the false king choke on his ashes.
His alchemists obey. More pots of wildfire were flung at the castle walls, bursting into unholy green infernos that consumed everything they touched. The very earth itself seemed to smolder under Viserys' madness. But as the green flames ignited anew, a powerful wind blows from the north, leaving the wildfire flickering. For a moment, it even threatens to die out, barely clinging on to life. A second gust blows, stronger than the last, sending ice down the spines of attackers and defenders alike. For the first time, the heart of the wildfire is beaten back by this unnatural cold, and from the icy mist that forms, Daemon Targaryen rides forth. At his side, Ned Stark and his sworn swords ride hard alongside his kingsguard, but the true army is just behind them, alongside the forces of the living. The Night King and his White Walkers, moving in perfect, terrifying unison, leading a horde of whites. Their presence sent frost creeping over the blackened battlefield where their feet touched. All these have sailed from the north, thanks to Lord Manderly's fleet. The Northmen and the White Walkers swept into the fray, their charge cutting through the chaos of the battlefield. Soldiers barely had time to react before the cold steel of the living and the unnatural weapons of the dead tore into them.
The traitor! Abominations! Kill them all!
His men rally, archers loosing a volley of flaming arrows, while more alchemists hurried forward with fresh caches of wildfire. The whites rush hard, taking the brunt of the attack, their broken bodies collapsing once more, consumed into ash as they approach. But after them comes the kingsguard. The greatest knights of their generation come rushing in to aid them. Arthur Dayne moves like a force of nature. Having handed over Dawn to Daemon, he now fights with a sword in each hand, turning them into a whirlwind. Gerald Hightower and Oswell Went cut down those who dared bar their way, slicing through the enemy soldiers. Jaime Lannister rides closest to the king, keeping him safe as the Northmen break off and rush towards the gate. Ned's cavalry strikes the royalist rearguard, driving them back and opening a path for him to reinforce Storm's End. The once mighty Stormlord had been fighting like a caged beast, his hammer breaking men with each strike, but his forces were overwhelmed, their defenses falling under the onslaught. As he sees Ned, though, Robert raises his hammer and roars.
Ned, you took your damn time.
Ned didn't answer. He and his men drove into the enemy, smashing through their ranks and pushing them back from the castle. Together, they rallied the Stormlanders, and for the first time since the battle began, the defenders surge forward. Viserys stands atop his siege tower, shrieking in fury. He motions to his pyromancers, and a new horror was unleashed. Barrels of wildfire hurled onto the charging White Walkers and Northmen alike. The emerald flames exploded, consuming everything in their path. Soldiers and whites alike screamed as they burned, some turning into ash in mere seconds. Even the cold of the Night King could not smother it. He managed to rush forward alongside Daemon. The two cut down the guards surrounding the tower, the Night King's blade freezing them in place, while the heat of Lightbringer sends wildfire jars exploding and pyromancers scattering those who get in their way. die. Viserys sees this and reaches for one of the pots of wildfire and hurls it at them. The Night King moves faster than any man should. He lands between Daemon and the incoming flames, taking the blast full on. The wildfire explodes against him, green fire engulfing the frozen creature. Daemon felt the heat, saw the emerald light reflect in the Night King's icy armor. It begins to crack, but somehow the Night King stands. For the first time, he sees emotion in the creature as he grits his teeth. Daemon sweeps Lightbringer towards the fire on the Night King, running along its back, and suddenly the flames die out, snuffed out by Lightbringer. The Night King looks up in surprise as he feels the pain dissipate. Viserys screams and hurls another pot of wildfire, but Daemon swings Lightbringer. The blade cut through the air and the wildfire itself. These false flames vanished as if swallowed by the light.
No! No! I am the dragon. The last dragon.
The two kings nod and rush into the tower. As they reach its base, Viserys' kingsguard rush at them. But four shapes rush at them. The Order of the Wolf Dragon rushes in, as does the Night King, and meets them head-on, allowing Daemon to slip past them and enter the siege tower. When he reaches the top, Viserys reaches for yet another wildfire jar, but with a single stroke of Lightbringer, he drove the blade through Viserys' chest. The Mad King gasps, eyes wide in disbelief, as the golden flames of Lightbringer consume him from within. His scream was brief. His body turned to ash, scattered by the wind. With his death, the battle is won. As the survivors gather amidst the ruin, Daemon stood over the remains of the uncle he had slain. His kingsguard looked on in silence, and the Night King approaches, regarding him with an expressionless gaze. Then, he offers an approving nod and begins to walk off. All around him, his whites and white walkers follow, maintaining their side of the bargain and returning beyond the wall. The two kings, one of fire, one of ice, stood together, and now dawn has come. With Viserys dead, Daemon is proclaimed the new king with the support of the Starks, Baratheons, Martells, and Lannisters. Though some might call him a kinslayer and a usurper, his position is quickly strengthened by these great houses and the mighty knights who surround him. One look from Lightbringer is enough to silence most critics, but more importantly, for the first time in a long while, people do not fear the flames. That's our theory. Westeros is a land filled with exciting stories and possibilities, and we love exploring them. If you want to accompany us on this journey across the Seven Kingdoms and beyond, then please like, share, and subscribe to our channel.